it comes back to my faith. That's my driving force in life, at the heart of who I am. But there's a scripture that says, "Whatever you do, work it out with all your heart as working for the Lord and not for men." And so that kind of keeps me grounded. So it's easy when we get.
Welcome to today's episode of the Lead Belt Chronicles podcast. I'm your host, John Steffen. If you've not yet done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode. Without further ado, let's get started. This is going to be our third episode, and I have a new guest with us. It's going to be Chris Sisk with CS Design. So him and his wife Stacy are the owners. So today we're going to learn about their business, the ins and outs of it, how they got started, and just their backstory. So Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John.
Yeah. So what I want to kind of do is kind of just real quick, so I kind of know where to go with it. Tell me a little bit about your background. I do know, I've known you for a little bit now. I met you at the some of the chamber meetings.
Yeah.
Do you know you mentioned you have an office in Columbia? Is that right?
We have an office space that we use in Columbia. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I assume you guys are not from around this area, or did you grow up in this area, or what's the story there?
I grew up closer to here than Columbia. So I grew up in a little town called Scott City.
Okay.
It's Scott City, Missouri, as we would say down there.
Okay.
It's not to the boot hill, but get in that direction. It's right below Cape Girardeau. That's also how we would say that.
Okay.
But I grew up. That's where I call home.
Okay. So what's the population there? Is it similar to like towns around here?
Gosh, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that in a while. But I don't even have a guess. But it's a smaller community. Cape was our metropolis that we would go to hang out and go do all the stuff, or Jackson even. But
Okay.
Yeah, it's a smaller community for sure.
Okay. So is it more of like I'm just trying to know your background. Is it more of like a farming or like an industry? Like what style of work was around there?
Yeah, so it was the train goes through there, so it had a lot of that going on. The Mississippi River is close by, and so we had some of that. But yeah, definitely some farming and built a lot of hay when I was younger, that kind of thing as well. But a small community, but a lot of little things like that for sure. It was good, hard-working community.
Okay, so you kind of have like a little similar background to myself. Do you consider yourself like born and raised on a farm, or are you more rural? Like, what was your childhood like?
Well, I consider myself more country as far as the, kind of my upbringing through that community for sure. Interesting enough, I was born in St. Louis, but through a series of events, I landed in Scott City my 8th grade year. So I lived there from 8th to 12th grade year. And but before that, I had traveled around some. But that's where I kind of establishing. That's where you start learning about yourself as a human, I guess, really, and start really picking up on life. And so that's where my what I remember as far as growing up and really establishing myself and who I am.
Okay, so do you feel like growing up there was really how you became the person you are today? Do you feel like it helped you develop your character, or what?
Yeah, so man, that's a long story, and I probably don't have time to get into all of it. But I'll give you an abbreviated long story, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So when I grew up, I said I was born in St. Louis. I lived with my mom there for a few years, and then I moved in with my dad, and we traveled all over the country. That's just kind of his nature. He's a traveling man, and then. In my 7th grade year, from my 7th grade to my 12th grade year, I was fostered by 3 different families. And so I moved from Dexter, Missouri, which is also in southeast Missouri. I don't know if you're familiar where that is. But then I moved to Scott City from my 7th grade year to my 8th grade year. Okay. So those different families were definitely influential, but in all of this, really what was kind of driving the crux point happened in college when I was learning about faith all the way to that point, and even living it out to the best I could. But in college, my faith became my own, is what I tell people. Yeah. It's where I really understood what a relationship with Jesus was, and from there, that's where life really kind of took off for me. That's where the most influences came through. A lot of my life is all based in and grounded in that, and who I am in that relationship.
And that's important to me. At the end of the day, my faith is important to me. My faith, my belief in Jesus is important to me. That's my foundation. That's what I was raised off of, and that's the person I am today. And that's why it's always important for me to, in this podcast, that's why I like to meet like-minded people.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why I wanted you to be my second guest. And it's kind of funny that you're actually the second Chris I've interviewed. So if I interview a third one, probably got to call it the Chris Cast.
It's going to have to be the Chris Cast. Yeah, you got to get one more Chris in there and keep the rhythm going.
There'd be a Chris Cast. There we go. But no, all jokes aside, like I said, I mean, that's amazing that, your faith is important to you. And I think we were talking one time at a luncheon about you had a little bit of background in volunteering. Did you kind of do some of the food banks?
So both volunteering and on staff. So to give you a quick tour through my professional career, I've been right out of college. I was on staff at a pretty large church, and we'll use the term that most people's familiar with. I was in vocational ministry. That means I had a title. I was serving on a church and that kind of thing. Well, after that, I landed in the corporate world, and I was with a small company called PepsiCo, which is a joke because they're huge, but that's as good as my jokes get, John, sorry. So I worked with the Frito-Lay world, and I was in a program there, leadership program, and pretty fast made it to a district manager. I moved to Rolla, Missouri. Had a great time with that, but it just wasn't my full passion. I was still heavily involved playing sports at that time, still pretty young, and so after some time being a district manager, I went from making a good salary on a good career path, and through some conversations with my wife, we decided to follow a passion of sports ministry, which was raise your own salary. So we went from one extreme to the other, per se, but it was amazing. It was so worth it, and had about a 5-year tenure doing that. And then I jumped back into another church position and doing vocational ministry there. After that, and that was in Columbia, that's when we moved to Columbia, by the way. So after some time there, had a great tenure there. I wish it would have ended better. That was, had just kind of a rough season at the end, and some things that said it was time to move on. So we did, and but we didn't know what to do. And we had served at the food bank there in Columbia, some different things, and then through some relationships, I ended up working there for a couple of years as a regional developer for the food bank, and had a fantastic job. Just getting to go around telling the story of what the food bank was doing, and they were really doing a lot of good things, serving the different counties and helping a lot of people. And so it was kind of fun. I wasn't always on the front lines, but we got to sneak in and do that. So we got to go in and help with the particular pantries and different things like that. So yeah, my career path has been a little bit off and on, but through all of that, that's kind of what in the backgrounds this whole time, a lot of this time, back in 2007, back in my Sports Crusaders days, my sports ministry days, is actually when I started doing a lot of the stuff that we do for CS Design, and it fit right in line with what my communications degree was. And so that's, we were kind of doing that to, honestly, to help raise money in the Sports Crusaders days, and it was just something that I had people wanting me to do that. Never thought that it would have turned to a full-time thing, but that's kind of part of what led all of that to happening after a couple of years in the food bank.
So CS Design wasn't something you set out to do, like as a full-time gig?
No,
Really?
Not at all. It was just a passion.
Really?
My degree's in communications, so is my wife's. And so, we studied a lot of that stuff in college, and we had a knack for it. And so we were just doing it because we loved doing it. And well, I was doing it because I loved doing it. Stacy came in much later into the scenes with that. But no, it just, it just kind of developed into its own beast over
Really?
time. Yeah.
That's pretty neat. I didn't realize that it was actually just like a side gig, you know, like it was I hate to call it side gig.
Yeah, well, side hustle is one of the common terms that you use. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do want to kind of dig into a little bit of what CS Design is about, because I do like, when I approached you about being on the podcast, you said one thing that really stood out to me, and I want you to kind of hit on that when I met with you. But just kind of get into that. So what do you offer? Why do you feel like CS Design is different than anybody else as far as in the line of work you're in?
Sure, and I appreciate you. I think the main, I think there's probably several things. I'm biased, obviously, because we do it. But I think the things that really, that we try to focus on is how, I'll use the word customer-centric we are. We really try to go in and connect with people and their specific goals and the audiences. And sometimes that's the starting point. Sometimes people don't even know to focus on that. So just being able to work through them on that. We're not big on people spending their dollars just for the sake of spending their dollars, you know, and we'd rather work with a client, make sure they have all that clarity before we even come up with a plan on how we can help them online, because online can be very specific and very direct to the audiences. So I think that's one thing that we do. We're also, we're committed to local, and that's probably been the hardest thing for us, especially. We moved from Columbia environment, even though we have a couple team members up there still, most of us live down here. And so we try to focus in this area a lot of the time. And that includes our team. We want our team to be able, we want to be able to sit in the same room, which for our industry, that's not necessary per se. But for us, it's important that we could sit together, come up with the plans, but also with our clients, we could sit down and have coffee with them and look at people in the eye, kind of hear and see their visions directly. And even with technology as good as it is, it's still not the same as sitting in a room with somebody. So we're committed to that. And it's a harder path because there's not a lot of people looking for employment in our industry in this area, and so a lot of times it means extra training and development, and that's okay because we can train them in our system and the way that we want them to approach customers and things. But yeah, that's the two things that I would say. I would say we're customer centric, and we're really committed to local. We do all of our own tricks too, by the way. So we don't outsource. I guess that'd be a third thing. Everything that we do with our own team. We don't outsource to anybody outside of our team, so that's pretty significant, and it challenges us sometimes, but we're pretty committed to that as well.
Yeah, and you also mentioned, like I said, when I approached you about this idea, you also said along the lines of that you try not to keep people feeling like they have to keep coming back. You kind of try and you teach them kind of how to be, as far as clients, how to kind of be solo, where they can come back to you for help, but you don't like to make them feel like they're on a hook per se, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in my Sports Crusaders days, we had somebody doing our web design before I took it over. And the reason why I took it over is because every little thing that we needed updated, it could be a paragraph or we would have to, communicate with them, and it'd be a pretty expensive bill. Well, as a ministry, as a not-for-profit ministry, we didn't have those kind of resources, and so that's where I was just learning. At that time, it was coding and splicing in images and all that stuff. So yeah, when we took this live full time, so to speak, or really since the start, we've never forced people to use us. We've always created our websites in a way that we can customers can build onto it, at least the basic stuff. There's obviously some things, and it's also depending on what level they're comfortable with. Some people don't want to mess with it at all, and that's fine. So we tell people, hey, you can do as much as you want, as you're comfortable with, and we'll be here for the rest. We're not going to leave you hanging or anything, so we'll be here. But yeah, I think that's important. So I think people should have, with the technology that we have, I think people should have as much control as they're comfortable having with their websites and their online stuff. Our job is to be a resource to help them succeed, not feel like we have to, again, lock them into using us for every little thing.
That's pretty neat. Like you're kind of like, in a way, you're kind of like a springboard for them. Like you kind of help them out, kind of just help them project forward in their business. That's pretty neat.
Right. Yeah.
One thing that I know I've looked into is, for this, for instance, right now, just with the podcast, I'm just kind of just doing everything on Facebook and YouTube, but eventually I want to actually create a website to where I can actually have everything in there.
Yeah.
I've tried, just looking at Wix or like Squarespace or something like that. So as far as like, if you compare yourself to those, which I don't believe you're comparable,
Right.
now what's the difference between somebody going to like Wix or Squarespace or all those online sources compared to that to you guys?
Sure. So Wix and Squarespace, there's a place for that. Usually it's at a very basic startup place in our opinion. Now, understand that we're coming at this from a professional standpoint of what can you do in the long term, or what are your goals in the long term. So we're always trying to look at things. What are you investing in now that's going to save you money in the long run? Maybe a year or two down the road too. So Wix and Squarespace, they do some really great starter websites, and they're getting better. They're working on making things better and better all the time. But as far as full functionality, as far as elasticity, when it comes to responsiveness, when it comes to some SEO development stuff, there's just some limitations that they have. Now, we have a system that we use that can actually create that same kind of platform for people. So we could build a website for you in a more professional platform that will still give you that drag and drop kind of functionality that those have. But we're not locked into, and we've built some Wix and Squarespace sites for people. We don't anymore. So just to make sure, we will still go in and work for people's websites if they have those kind of platforms. Because I think there is a place, and sometimes that's just where people need to be. Because even the websites that we build, even though they're cost effective, they're still more expensive than a Wix or a Squarespace. But we just believe that they're the best option right now for that middle ground of us being able to develop and the client being able to work on their own stuff. So, and when something different comes along and we try it and it works out good for the client and for what the client needs, then we'll probably switch to that. So we're not locked into anything. Our goal again is to find the best solutions for our clients so that they can be successful online. And so that's, I guess that's the roundabout answer. There is a place for it. It's usually super limited for the long haul. But if you're a business owner that's just trying something out and don't know if you're in it for the long haul, that's probably where you want to invest in something like that. Yeah. But if you're in it for the long haul and you already want to invest with a good online presence, I'm not sure those really fit the bill for the long term, for the long haul. This one.
Well, a good example, I just try and compare it. Like right now, I'm videoing this on my iPhone. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to use my iPhone for forever. It's getting me through this time to be able to, start the podcast and get started. Eventually, I want to get a better camera.
Yeah.
I want to get a better microphone, better lighting. So for the time being, same instance, like it's able to get me by for the time being, but eventually, that's not how I want. Permanently, that's not how I want to go. Yeah. And that's what I like about what you guys do. Yeah. Another thing is along the lines of, just trying to compare your business and my business, and obviously it's apples and oranges. But I don't like mentioning names, but there's a lot of other insurance companies that are online. Mm-hmm. People tell me all the time, well, when I call XYZ company, I have to call this 800 number, I can't ever get a hold of anybody. Well, I always tell people, like, hey, if you need something, I'm here in Deloge, Missouri, give me a call, come by my office. And that's like you guys. Like, I feel like you'd be like, okay, well, I'm on Wix, but what if I run into an issue? I've never tried having to call somebody. More than likely, it's going to be a 1-800 number you have to call, or, a toll-free, whatever. But where you guys are at, you're able to provide the extra service of being there to kind of guide the person along the path of success.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of, obviously I know insurance and what you guys do is totally different,
but it is, but it's still customer based. So,
yeah, for sure.
Paying attention to the client and what they need. So.
For sure. How can businesses optimize their digital footprint and help grow their business? And what would you recommend for them as far as businesses that are just trying to grow their digital platform and trying to get their name out there? What would you recommend?
Oh, sure. Well, the first thing I would say is probably just make sure you have your business listings. And the three that we recommend right off the top are Google, Bing, and Yelp. Claim your business listings on those. It's surprising to me the amount of people that don't have those things those are pretty basic, and those are actually free. If you don't want to do them yourself, you can go on and do them free, claim your business, and that will give you some online presence. But really the next thing is a lot like it's essentially the same concept that you would do with a business plan. You got to think about your demographics that you're wanting to reach, and then come up with a plan to hit those in those demographics. There's obviously websites are still the strongest online presence. So if you don't have a good website, I'm a big firm believer in word of mouth. Even though I've been in the online world for years, I'm still gonna my first connection with somebody is usually gonna be because of word of mouth referral. But the very next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look online and see how credible they are, based on that presence, on how much they care about that. It's your online storefront, and so that represents you just as much as your physical building would be. But I'm going to see your online store before I see your physical building a lot of times. So obviously, so a website, a good website, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to have the information. And there's obviously certain things we look for: phone numbers, call to actions, those kind of things that are important. What are you about? What's your story? And just a couple sentences, kind of things. So some very specific things like that. So, but then when you get on that, I mean, your target audience is going to steer really the rest of how you're going to approach things. So if you are, depending on the demographic you're trying to reach, that's going to help you. If you want to be in social media, and what social media platforms you go in, if you're going to be hitting newsletters, if you're going to be doing a combination of things. So really just, but I think it all starts with, what are your goals and who are you trying to reach? If you can answer those questions, then you can usually come up with a pretty good plan. Obviously you got to know your budgets and those kind of things. It's part of the business plan, but yeah. So make sure you have your Google listing or your business listings, Google, Bing, and Yelp. Those are free. And then get your website in order, and then kind of stem out from there and how you want to do that. So,
what's your thoughts on like Facebook ads or Facebook business page, Instagram, and definitely like TikTok? How do you feel about like TikTok, like short videos when it comes to the business?
I love watching them. That's what so and that's another one of those things. I see the purpose in them. Stacy runs our social media, all the different social media stuff. So she'd probably have a lot more to say to this. But my take on it is, the people who live on those things. And so if your audience, it goes back to demographics, if your audience is on those things, then it's probably not a bad thing to try to figure out something that, if that's the investment you need to make, find a way to invest in that and get on those different platforms at some level. Again, focused on the demographics piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you feel like, as far as posting like videos, posts on Facebook, I know there's an algorithm, that involves there. Is there a certain time? I'm trying to compare with myself, because I'm trying to build my base. I'm trying to build this podcast up. So is there like a certain time? Are you supposed to post at least once a day? Are you supposed to post at like 2 p.m. every day? You know what I'm saying? Is there like, you believe that there's some kind of like a rhyme or reason to that?
If you post at noon and just try to sell every day, then you're going to be, no, I'm just kidding. So again, it's every, use Facebook. There's a very specific rhythm that goes with Facebook. If you just go on as a business and try to sell yourself all the time, people are going to catch on to that and they're not going to follow you. So that's one thing, is just kind of know the community that you're in, know the platform that you're in. Facebook people are, I say they're personable. I mean, they're going to be posting a lot of things that they're celebrating a lot of times, or if they're asking for help, and then other stuff that sometimes it's just a mess. But the reality is, just kind of be part of the community. I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make, is find out the rhythm of that feed, and demographics that you're trying to connect with. There are different times, and I couldn't tell you what they are right now. They fluctuate and shift, and there are trackers. I think Facebook even helps with some of that, with some of your scheduling stuff. but that's easy to just do a quick Google search to find out, what are the best times that people are looking at right now. And it's probably good to go in there and check those every so often because they do shift. I mean, the rhythm shifts in the different seasons and things like that. But yeah, there are definitely times where you want to post the specific, where you just want to post in general.
Yeah, obviously, I know, like you said, you can research this out, but my mind kind of goes to, this is what I think about, is I feel like the best times maybe to start sharing stuff, during the day, like I said, if you're going to post once a day, is I would think probably first thing in the morning, where you think 8 to 9 a.m., and then like after people get off work, after 5 p.m., do you think is that the direction you want to go, or, you know what I mean, or do you feel like that's kind of the best times, or what do you think?
Yeah, so honestly, I've had most of my success posting in the evenings as far as when I'm posting things. I just typically use it for personal now. We have a team that does our own team does our social media now. And so they could probably say the analytics more specifically on that. But the other thing that I would say, so yes, kind of play with your audience and figure out some different times and days. I think it used to be like Tuesdays and Thursdays used to be some of the times. Don't go out and post every Tuesday and Thursday, based on me saying that right now, because I think there is some fluctuation in that. But the other thing to think about too is trying to make it human. So people love faces. People love seeing, human, the human behind the machines. So that's probably as important as time of day, is trying to make it human. But yeah, I don't know the specific times right now that they say is I could make up something, but I honestly don't know. So
there we go.
Stacy's probably gonna be screaming at me when she sees this and says, "I can't believe you don't know this."
There you go.
But I don't do that part right now.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do know, I was referred to him as Chris 1, okay, you're Chris 2.
All right.
Chris Dunlap on the first episode.
Yeah.
Is he the first or second episode? I can't remember, because we talked about so much. But he also recommended it's also quality over quantity too. Like for instance, there's a TikTok. I can't think what his name is, but a TikTok creator. He made a video here a while back. He's a comedic. He does a lot of comedy and stuff.
Okay.
But he came out and said, I've been posting one video a day for the last 2 years. And I feel like there's a lot of, especially TikTok, there's a lot of people on there that they'll just throw 3-4 videos or whatever a day. But I feel like it kind of just bugs people. I feel like it's quality over quantity too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things. So going back to what I was saying about after you build a website, finding out what social media platforms. One of the things we coach people in is to only do as much as you can manage. We were at fault when we started CS Design. We just we knew how the system worked, so we just started up a platform, and then I think 80% of them sat stagnant, which is not a good thing. That's not what that's not a good goal to have. And so we let people know that that's not a healthy thing. So as well as the content, don't even start a platform if you can't be consistent with it and you can't commit to it. So that's important to think about. Again, a lot of it's forethought. Put the work into thinking about it and planning in advance. And we've run across so many people with great stories in the area, and it's just cool to have. To see some of those stories revealed, and we're so excited to hear some. Love to hear Chris's story. Can't wait to hear who you get on here. And we're going to be consistent listeners, I guarantee you, because it's just. I think that's meaningful to understand the people behind. We're living together. We're working together. We're trying to be successful together. And so I think it just builds a lot of good community to hear those stories. And
for sure.
Really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. So
yeah, for sure. And I said, like you said, I feel like you have a story to tell, especially, and it's probably a story we won't be able to tell all today, obviously, but I definitely want to sit down with you for sure. And I look forward to future people that I want to sit down with. And a lot of the reason why is because as time goes, we gain knowledge. Everybody should pretty much gain knowledge by reading books, whatever. And the thing is, if that knowledge or those stories are not documented, for instance, like my grandpa, he's 81 years old. I love hearing my grandpa talk about lawn tear, or back in the day, this, and this, and he doesn't like to be on video or anything, but I love to sit down with him. And those are the kind of people that, not just him, but everybody else that once they pass away, those stories are just a memory at that point. And obviously, unless they can tell their story and you document it, they can be gone forever.
Right.
And that's what I think sad in a way. That's why I'm trying to prevent. I want to preserve history. And to share it with everybody else. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And again, thanks for being proactive and making it happen. A lot of us have ideas, we just don't have the time to follow through with it. So appreciate you pushing it through and making it happen, man. So I can't wait to. I bet your grandpa would just being a fly on the wall hearing some of the stories. I bet that would be amazing. So.
Oh yeah, some of the crazy stories that they used to do as kids, and they were some of the stuff that, not him, but some of his brothers and some people he knew, like he told stories like they did this, and there's some crazy stuff that them guys just do. My grandpa wasn't like that, he wasn't like a, one of those guys that caused havoc or something, but he told some stories about so-and-so, back in the day did this, but anyways, he's got some good stories. But I want to kind of continue on here. I want to try and get through as many of these questions as I can. I know the first 2 episodes I didn't really have any questions wrote down or anything, but I just kind of want to keep us on track here with these questions. Second question is, so what motivates you when you get overwhelmed and discouraged? Because I know I've talked to you, when I talked to you just the other day, you're like, hey, I have this time allotted out where I'm going to watch a football game, because I know you get busy. So kind of dig into that question.
Yeah. So to directly answer your question is, I quit probably about 10 times a month.
Just don't tell them about it.
Somebody told me that a long time ago, and I chuckled about it. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, man, that really makes sense. But being a small business owner, being a dad of 4, a husband, obviously, there's a lot of pulls for your time and your attention and that kind of thing. And I love all of it, but sometimes you just need that space, or sometimes you just have a bad day, you just need to break away, and so I do. I plan time, both small times and big times, to just kind of get away and get away from the machines and get away from the just the excitement of life, and just be away. But I also, I think it's important, going back to my faith, I did a study on significance quite a few years back, and as much as I care about people and want to be a people pleaser and make sure everything's, neat and tidy and all of those good things, I've learned that my significance doesn't come from that or depend on those kind of things. And so there's usually a process to get my mind back to there. I have to stop and pause when I'm discouraged to figure out, why am I discouraged? What's going on here? What's the bad news that I believe in, and what's the truth? And going through that process. But developing that process has helped me kind of, you still go through it, but it's a lot shorter when you can develop that process to kind of remember where your value is and your worth, and it brings you back the next morning, and you start right back again. So you might quit the night before, but you wake up the next morning with lace them up and get back to work. So
you quit, but you don't tell anybody you quit.
That's right. That's right. You don't tell anybody you quit. So that's right.
Do you have any kind of hobbies that you do outside of work?
Oh man,
that doesn't pertain to digital marketing? Or...
So traveling, I traveled a lot when I was younger. A lot of overseas, really a lot of sports ministry. I got to play basketball in a lot of countries and did some fun stuff there. And so, but my wife and I have started traveling again. So that's probably a big one. I've already mentioned my kids, and that's almost a full-time hobby with this active. One of my kids graduated. He's in the Navy now, and so he's he's off in another part of the country, but the other three are plenty active, and so chasing them around is, I guess we can call that a hobby. It's a lot of fun seeing them just growing up and doing the things that they love to do, and finding successes, but also finding struggles and working through all those different things. And but I also like to go camping, just get away. I have a little secret camping spot that I'll get away and just go, and again, no computer type thing, and
it is nice
doing that kind of thing. So do some kayak fishing and that kind of thing.
There you go.
Yeah,
it is nice kind of get away. I hate to say it, get away where there's no cell service, because that can be good or bad, especially if there's an accident or something. But it is nice kind of get away. My wife and I actually found us, and it's not really a secret location, but over the summer we found this nice place where we could take the dogs and stuff, and it's nice down there because cell service is not far away from the destination. So if something does happen, I know I can get a hold of somebody. But where the actual destination is, like on the riverside, it's actually I don't believe there's no cell service, which is nice because you're kind of out of civilization, and the phone's not ringing, and you get away from it. It is nice.
Yeah, and even if the phone's with you, it's not in your face as much, not as prominent.
Yeah, for sure. As far as motivation or inspiration, do you have a certain quote, like a quote you live by that kind of motivates you?
Yeah, and again, it comes back to my faith. That's my driving force in life, at the heart of who I am. But there's a scripture that says, "Whatever you do, work it out with all your heart, is working for the Lord and not for men." And so that kind of keeps me grounded. So it's easy when we have successes in what we do to get pretty excited about it, and or if we have failures, it's pretty easy to get pretty discouraged about it. But that kind of helps remind me that everything I'm doing it to honor who I serve and who I love the most. And what that does is it just kind of keeps me grounded and keeps me focused on doing the right thing all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And that is a good verse for sure. Something good to live by too, something to remember.
Yeah.
So this is a simple question. I'm sure you've probably been asked this before, but how do you define success, and do you feel successful?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So for me, my definition of success has changed probably quite a bit through the years. I think where I am at it right now, and I think there's different levels to this question. But the one thing that I'll say is we're big goal setters. So we try to have a 1, 3, and 5 year plan set up. And so the way that we feel successful right now is, one is if we have our plan, if we can clearly define that plan, and if we're moving toward that plan each and every day at some level. And so it's a moving target, because sometimes those goals do shift and those plans do change, and we have to be available to that. But I think success comes from having a target and shooting at it. Somebody, I think it was one of my mentors, told me. He said, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. And there's a lot of truth to that. So there's days when I go, I'm like, why am I? Well, and I'll realize, I didn't have my goal set out for today. So I'm just kind of spinning around in circles and hoping something good comes from it. And there are designated days where I just go without plans. Those are usually my getaway days and weekends. But when I'm in go mode, when I'm in the day-to-day, I've got to have a goal and plan. Part of it's because I want to be done and I want to be able to focus on my family and the other things I have going on. But part of it's just because I want to look back and say, okay, I did the very best I could do for the people that I'm entrusted to serve today. And so, but it starts, for us, it starts with the 1, 3, 5 year plans, and then how are we focused on those? And what are we doing each and every day to work toward those things? So.
Yeah, I feel like it's always important to see where you're headed, kind of see what those plans are, and I'm kind of just hitting on what Chris number 1 said, Chris Dunlap said. Success is just the little wins as you go towards the grander goal. And actually I shared his quote as a picture, I think this morning, or I should say Tuesday morning. Because when this comes out, this is probably going to be Monday morning. So,
all right.
But yeah, so I think that's great. Is there anything you kind of want to leave, like kind of draw us to end with? Is there any kind of wisdom you want to share? Anything you kind of want to leave?
Oh gosh, I don't know about that. I just want to reemphasize how excited I am for you, John, and for this new journey that you're on. So, sincerely, I'm so excited about hearing stories in our area. I think there's a lot of people with good stories to tell, who are in the, day to day, just really giving their best, to build up community, to build up other people around them, and I just can't wait to hear all the different stories that are going to come from this. And I'm honored and flattered that you would allow me to come on here and be a part of this. But man, I'm super excited for what you're going to be doing here and the stories that we're going to be hearing. So thank you for having the courage to start something new and get it out there.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely appreciate you coming on here. Like I could say many times, there are a lot of people who have stories to tell, and my whole goal, I have several goals with this podcast, I'll be honest with you. But I just want to be able to tell the stories so that way people can apply some of that wisdom to their life. Mm-hmm. Somebody that, for instance, that's needing, help with digital marketing, hopefully they'll reach out to you, or they might take this video and they might be able to apply it to their life. Mm-hmm. You just never know. So I think you do things in life for a reason. I think you meet people for a reason. Like I said, I met you and many times, at the different luncheons. And that's what I definitely like about you guys is if you are not able to make it, Stacy's there. Yeah. If Stacy cannot make it, somebody else is there representing CS Design. Yeah. Community is huge to me. Yeah. Number one, my family was born and raised here. Yeah. So I think it is important to remember community and be there for people. Right. I do have one last question for you. All right. CS Design. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I know where the name came from. Mm-hmm. So how did you come up with CS Design?
Sure. So it's a little tricky. So when I had to come up with a name, it was just a DBA back in 2007 when we kind of started this whole deal. And so it started out as Chris Sisk Design. Mm-hmm. But it was, I had the forethought to think about, well, if Stacy ever does join me, this still works. So now we can technically say, because she did eventually join, it took her years. So, she had to come in and straighten the whole thing out that I had messed up to that point, basically, because I could design, I could create things, I could do web stuff, but there's a lot of, business stuff that I had to learn and figure out. And she came in and brought a lot of those, a lot of that structure that I needed in it. And so when she came on, it was officially, now it's Chris and Stacy Design. So there you go. CS Design. So yeah, it's nothing too profound. It was just kind of starting as a DBA, we're like, okay, this works. So it's just, and we've thought, honestly, for different times throughout the years about rebranding and different things like that, but the right thing hasn't come along yet. So
yeah, and you also got to be careful with that too, because people get so used to one name, and then they think that it's a totally different name or totally different organization if you change the name. Right. But that's pretty cool. Yeah. So I tell you what, well, Chris, I know it's Tuesday evening here. Like I said, this video is probably gonna come out Monday morning. All right. I appreciate you coming out tonight or this evening and definitely sitting down with me. Other than that, what I want to leave you guys with is if you guys have any questions, feedback, or thoughts, go ahead and shoot me an email. I'll put that down below here. Also, I have actually had somebody reach out to me wanting to be on the podcast, which is I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be meeting with him, kind of talk with him a little bit. But if you feel like you would like to be on the podcast, or you want to talk to me about being on the podcast, once again, shoot me an email. I'd love to sit down and talk with you. Other than that, Chris, where can people find, obviously probably csdesign.com, or where can they find it? Yeah,
csdesign.online.
Okay.
csdesignonline.com does work, because a lot of people still like that .com. And then our local number, if you want me to give that, is 436-3717. Okay. So that's a 573, of course. And or you can find us in Farmington or Potosi or Columbia. Okay. So
awesome. Yeah, that'll work. Well, Chris, like I said, thanks again. But hopefully there'll be many more podcasts. I feel like this is definitely not part one, only part one. I feel like there's gonna be more. So, but anyhow, like I said, just reach out if you guys have any questions or thoughts. But other than that, I will see you guys next time.